We're continuing our conversation that Dr. Frank Thomas and I have been having on the subject, Don't Drop the Mic. He is trying to pierce into the inner inventory of my soul and thereby detect the philosophical ideologies behind how I construct my messages. And with all of the vulnerability of climbing on an Xray machine, I am now on the Xray machine, and at your discretion, sir, let's do this.
So could you articulate to our wonderful audience why it is so important that we X-ray you?
You actually made me feel that relevance, that I have an obligation to those that shall come after me to leave traces behind, crumbs, clues, concepts, ideologies, whereby they can borrow from them, not imitate them, but borrow from them those substantive things that will help them to reach their destiny. And it was that coercion that made me submit to this process.
Well, thank you. And you know, as a part of that, so much of our genius goes to the grave with preachers. And so, you know, we've been using the language. So we'll watch the videos and we'll get a pinch of this and a pinch of that. Or we'll watch the clothes on YouTube and we'll imitate the clothes, or we'll dress like you might dress, or all of that. But it's really the internal.
Absolutely.
And so what I'm hoping is that we can grapple with what are the internal processes so that a younger preacher or another preacher or maybe a business person or maybe a lay person can imitate those inner practices that are behind what you see on the pulpit or what you might read in a book. So that's kind of where I am. I'm trying to just get these practices or get it out so that people see the essence, and then I'm better that way than just watching your sermons and trying to close like you close, or sound like you sound, or walk like you walk.
Rather than think like I think.
Rather than think like you think. So that's why, and I appreciate you, working with me, because it really is important work. I think that African American preachers do genius, and I think that you're doing genius.
Thank you.
And I think that it can be replicated. You know, maybe not in the exact form, because everybody's unique. But at the core of it, you've been able to empower your uniqueness, release your uniqueness, take confidence in your uniqueness. And so that's what we want our audience to.
That's a lifelong journey.
Yes. So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is you've spoken to a tremendous scope and breadth of the human family. You've spoken for Microsoft, Toyota, the King of Swaziland, the President of Uganda, the President of Namibia, Hillsong in Australia, talk shows, Interview with Larry King, Oprah, Dr. Phil, Breakfast Club, Essence events. You've been on the cover of Time, Ebony, the Wall Street Journal. That is a wide swath of the human family.
Yes.
So what have you learned about human communication?
I've learned a lot. I have been in the White House in the middle of some of the most volatile, turbulent times in the history of this country. I was about 8 feet away from President Bill Clinton when he announced his guilt with Monica Lewinsky. I got to see that up close, unedited, and to draw some conclusions from it. I was with President Bush and Katrina, met Air Force One when it landed in Baton Rouge. I rode in the car with the governor and the mayor and knew a little bit more than what the press opened up at the time. I had to manage that information, and character is of the essence. You can't get in the room if you can't be trusted. And so that was a vital part of it. Sometimes being trusted means being persecuted and remaining silent, because if you defended yourself, you would divulge information that was confidential. It's privileged information. You have to hold your peace and let time adjudicate justice. Just being, I spoke for President Obama for his Easter service. I spoke for him for his inauguration, which was probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life, incidentally. I spoke for President Bush during, after Katrina at the National Cathedral. Those moments, the weight of the world rests on you. It's not about being an excellent orator. It's about the huge responsibility that you have to say something meaningful that galvanizes a body of people who are shattered and angry or hurt. And the weight of leadership on a global level is transformative. I think it changed me. You go into a situation to change it, but ultimately it changes you.
Yeah.
And you leave the room a little bit larger in your thinking and your understanding of what it takes to lead a diverse group of people. See, when we lead a church, we're leading a group of people who believe what we believe, think what we think, and by and large agree with what we said. Okay, when you get out of that bubble into the bigger stream of all of these other ideas that have to be managed, your sensitivity has to diminish. And the globalness with which you approach a subject has to consider more than your own perspective in order to be effective at what you do. And so I think my preaching has benefited from that, a more global thinking process when I go about ministry. My leadership has benefited from that because I now understand that trouble is a part of leadership. Tough times are a part of leadership. Making tough decisions and withstanding controversy is a part of leadership. It's not that the devil has done it to me, It's not the cliche things we say about haters. This is a part of the job description. Managing that and standing up to that requires great fortitude and great inner strength and great inner prayer and consecration to know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are and you allow other people to tell you who you are and you spend all of your life defending yourself against what they said about you. But when you know who you are, you're not so easily moved by who they say you are because you realize they really don't know you and they really don't see you and it's just them giving their opinions and everybody has one.
Yeah, right. So I'm gonna go back because again, I love the response. I want to push you. One of your things that you suggest is that we're more alike than we are different. Speaking to all of these folks, rich, poor, white, black, Latinx, gay, straight, pauper, queen.
Do it every Sunday.
So what have you learned that is so? I know that response to this. I just want you to make it. The response is that we're more alike than we're different.
We're definitely more alike than we are different. I mean, I did a 3-day revival in San Quentin. I ministered to Erica Shepherd on death row. I've been with parents who were about to bury a mongoloid baby or disconnect them from life support. When you are with people in trouble, you get to see who they really are. All the shades come down when the bleeding starts. Right. And we are more alike than we are different. And knowing that, I'm a centrist in my thinking. I tend to be a bridge builder and a unifier wherever possible. And if I can't build a bridge, I leave you alone. But I think that our country suffers by the polarization that we have right now. I think that we are polarized by a system that is designed to feed us information, but also designed to make money. And those two ideas are conflicting. Right. So because a lot of times I will do a story for ratings rather than relevance. When I have to satisfy the numbers in order to charge the advertisers, sometimes I spike the punch to get the result I need. And so I think that our country is separated and divisive because ratings have ruled more than reality. And in the same way, truth is generally somewhere in between what everybody's fussing about. It's probably somewhere in the middle. Our villains are not as bad as we think they are, and our heroes are not as holy as we think that they are. It's always somewhere in the middle of that. Understanding that global perspective is my responsibility every Sunday morning. Because every time I stand in front of a crowd, I have everything from homeless people coming out of the shelter to people who teach at universities and speak Greek and Hebrew, to people who are chemists and doctors and lawyers, to people who are making beds and just got off work and are wearing a Walmart uniform or a Kmart uniform. I'm speaking to America. They're black and white. They're Latino. A lot of them are Nigerian, Ghanaian, Barbadian, Bahamian, Jamaican. All of them are there in that service. I speak to people who have translation systems in because they don't even speak English, so they speak Portuguese, or they speak Spanish, or they speak French, and so then they're the hearing impaired, so they're signing my message. It makes you careful what you say. Okay, you don't run off and say everything that everybody said who's talking to people who are all of their generation or all of their ethnicity or all of their political persuasion. You have to be a little bit more broad in your approach. All of these things that you're talking about shape the way that I think, and it shapes the way that I lead, and it shapes the way that I approach a text. Because you can't be broad everywhere else and be narrow when it comes down to the text.
Exactly.
So what we're really delving down into, talking is about listening.
Right.
And you can't speak if you can't hear. And so really, if you're gonna be a great orator, you have to be a great listener. Yeah. And I think the great ministry is born out of the ability to listen to people, find out where they are, and to understand how to connect with them and how to relate to them. We are very similar. Right. All of us want to be loved. Mm-hmm. All of us want the best for our children. All of us want to give love. All of us want to be appreciated. All of us want clean air and clean water and healthy children and an opportunity to get up and to become somebody. All of us want to withstand the vicissitudes of life. Yep. All of us want to see progress in our life. Look at all of the things that unite us. If you take the traditionally called the Rust Belt states, I think they have a new name now, but the Rust Belt states, and you take the inner city and the debate that exists politically between them, and they would never come together, and yet their complaints are exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why America has started talking so loud that we can't hear each other. Mm-hmm. If we could back up a moment and hear each other, there's more to unite us than there is to divide us. Yeah. And I think that's true of all people groups. I look for the center thing that connects us and start from there. Because if you get around the outer perimeters of where we think differently, we will spend the whole experience fighting over points and lose the huge opportunity that we have to see ourselves as brothers. Because once you see yourselves as brothers, those polarity issues, all of a sudden they begin to melt away and diminish in their significance.
I was holding that all that whole time. I was like, go ahead.
Let it go, brother. Let it go.
No, it was too good for me to cough in the middle of that. I didn't know if they could take a cough out.
They can take the cough out.
I want to go to this text, but I want to ask you this question. After this, I'm definitely going to this text. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting somewhere and I've got 25 members. Mm-hmm. How do I be broad when I'm in small places?
I totally get it. I'm so glad you asked me that question. The question is probably better than my answer, but I love the question because the question itself suggests something that I know you know, but perhaps the viewing audience might not know. I didn't start my life with cameras on. I didn't start my life with crowds of people. I didn't start my ministry in front of 100 people. It was a mammoth crowd, unthinkable. I couldn't imagine 100 people. I started pastoring with 7 people, mm-hmm. And I had to bring a couple of them to church. So I get it. I can deeply relate to it. I spent as many years in obscurity as I have in notoriety. They're almost 50-50. Uh-huh. Over the 43 years of my ministry, I spent a lot of time breaking up domestic violence cases and going to the hospital and frying chicken in the back of the church and doing some of everything mm-hmm. to keep it going. Answer to your question is this. I never preach only to the people that I see in the room. I preach to the people I see in my spirit. And so greatness doesn't wait for guests to come. You see, and I think one of the great mistakes that we make today is that we're waiting to be discovered and then we're going to shoot our best shot. But if you don't shoot your best shot, you'll never be discovered.
That's right.
And so you have to take every opportunity and treat it as if the most prestigious audience you've ever met is standing before you.
That's right.
Never underestimate that audience because, first of all, that might be there.
Right.
One person in that crowd of 10 could change the trajectory of your life. You know, if I went back over my life and showed you the pivotal points in my life that led to the pivotal points in my life, it was always because one person was in the crowd. It wasn't always that the crowd was big.
Right.
But the calling is big. And you have to see the calling big, not the crowd.
Right.
And if you respect the calling enough to give your very best while nobody's watching, somebody's always watching. and even if you've been misallocated and your gift is greater than your opportunity, in order to be transplanted, you have to be great in a small place.
That's right.
You see, and I think that sometimes God gives you a small place to practice. He put Moses on the backside of the desert so he could practice, so that when he got before Pharaoh, he would know how to do his tricks. Okay, and so he says, Moses, stick your hand into your breast, and it turns out leprous, you know, pour out water, it turns to blood, and he takes it, throw your rod, it turns into a serpent. All of this is a dress rehearsal for what's next. And I earnestly believe this. I'm probably giving you more than you want, but I earnestly believe that life is a repetition of cycles on the next level. So if you don't solve it on this level, it's going to meet you on the next level. And it's going to keep meeting you until you conquer it, whether it's unforgiveness, whether it's pride, whatever it is that you're fighting against. If you don't break it here, it's waiting for you there. And so on the other hand, if greatness starts in obscurity, and nature hints that it does because birth starts in the womb. If big men start as a cell placed in a womb and grow beyond the capacity of that womb and that becomes birth, then nature is teaching us, start small, grow great.
Yes. Let me go to this text because, one more question. We have trouble getting to clips and text. Yeah, so we are going there after this. So is it fair to say that, maybe this is, you'll get the essence of the question behind the question. Is it fair to say you preached harder when you had 7 people than you did when you have thousands of people? That preached harder.
You have to be better.
Right.
You have to be better when the room is small. You can't touch your neighbor when the neighbor's across the aisle. Yeah, you have to be better. You have to feel more space. You have to pull more from what's in you than what's around you.
Right.
And so I think preachers who start in obscurity or who preach every Sunday in small crowds have to be excellent in order to hold that crowd. And a small church is easy to leave. You know, because it doesn't have all the theatrics and all the drama, and people can leave readily. So you have to be everything. It's a one man. It's like stand-up comedy. It's one thing to be comedic in a script, but when you walk out on that stage and you are the script, there is no supporting actor. There is no set change. There is no change of lighting. You walk out there cold, flat-footed, and for an hour and a half, command that stage without any support or anybody to feed off of. That's a whole different level of excellence. And if there are no other players on the stage, then look at how much you have to pull from within you in order to be you. You cannot be at the mercy of the room. Because if you're going to pull your strength from the crowd, then you're going to vacillate from crowd to crowd to crowd. You have to be fully compacted inwardly in order to deliver and to do what you do. And you cannot wait till you get there to be there, because being there is what takes you there. Okay? And I think that is so important. I did our play, Woman Are Loose, and Reuben Cannon was in the crowd when we did the play. I didn't know he was in the crowd. I didn't know who he was. He comes up to me afterwards and says, I think that's a movie. And I want to make that a move. One person in the room, one person, not 1,000, not 1,000,000, one person in the room. I was preaching a day service for Dr. Quandra Wilson years ago in a church that seats maybe 300. It had about 50 people in it, but one of them was Archie Dennis. And Archie Dennis invited me to the Believers Convention. And there I met Sarah Jordan Powell, who introduced me to Carlton Pearson. And there Carlton Pearson put me on television, which brought me to TBN. Right. But if I hadn't been willing to do the day service with 50 people and give them the very best of me, because, see, it's really, now in the corporate America, we would call it branding, but for the sake of the religious, I won't use this term. This is not about the room. This is about the standards you hold yourself to. You should hold yourself to such a standard of excellence and indiscriminate of who's in the room, that you deliver on a certain level because you ought to think enough of your God and enough of yourself to present your very best. I cannot stand the ride home if I don't think I presented my very best. That ride home is torture. I don't want to beat myself in the car and I have to deal with all the things I'm going to say to myself about myself if I don't. If I deliver my best and you reject me, I can handle it.
Right.
But if I have to ride home thinking that you didn't see me, then I can't handle it, because that means I allowed my feelings to override my faith.
Right.
And that's something I just can't stand.
Talk to me about how your Pentecost background shapes your preaching.
Oh, I think it has a lot to do with it. First of all, I grew up Baptist. I grew up in the Baptist church. I'm very eclectic, okay? My father's people were all AME for generations, as far as I know. I'm not sure that my father has anybody in his family that is not AME. Generations of AME. Conversely, my mother's people were all Baptists, deeply Baptist. In fact, when I preached at one of my aunt's funeral at Morning Star Baptist Church in Marion, Alabama, I said, my mother would say, I have arrived. You preached at Morning Star, child? Get out of here. I preached at Morning Star, mama. Yeah, Morning Star Baptist Church. And that was the church she grew up in. That was the church my maternal grandparents are buried behind, and many of my aunts are buried there. And so I had that influence. I didn't enter into the Pentecostal arena until my father died at I started going over there around 15. He died when I was 16. About 16, this whole notion of Holy Spirit and its relevance in my life became meaningful. And I think as my father exited, the void created an awareness of a need for a father bigger than what religion itself could afford. And I started struggling with, is there anything more to God than what I have? In the Pentecostal tradition, the emphasis was placed on a place that I was not used to it being placed on. It was fervor, it was fire, and it was the Bible only. So most people read books about the Bible, but they don't read the Bible. They read what everybody says about the Bible, but they don't read the Bible, okay? So they study what others studied about the Bible. Being Pentecostal, we were taught to study the Bible. Now, they carried it to extremes. They didn't want you to read anything else. And you definitely need to read a whole quandary of things that need to be put into your spirit. But having said that, the respect for the text is deeply affected by my Pentecostal upbringing and my style of preaching. And I didn't know anything about opulence or elegance, because at the time I became Pentecostal, it wasn't popular. So I had never been in a big Pentecostal church. All the Baptist churches were nice in Charleston and plush. In comparison to the holiness Pentecostal churches were small and dank. And initially my mother thought a bit beneath me. You know, I broke rank. You know, my pastor was the moderator of the State Baptist Convention. And you're going over there to that sanctified church? You know, so all of, for me, that perception required humility. Humility always has rewards. Anytime you say, God, I will give up what seems to be valuable to have a greater expression of you, regardless to what you call it, Pentecostal, Skycostal, it doesn't matter what you call it, that sacrifice, anytime you come to God with sacrifice, there will always be fire. Right. And so that affected me to a great degree. The emphasis on the scriptures, the old men who taught me were not famous, were not well known, were not renowned. I'm always intimidated when people ask me who influenced you, because I want to give them these big names that they're expecting. But the people who influenced me were never seeking popularity. It's not just that they didn't have it, they didn't seek it. What I love about that is it shaped to my priorities. You know, I didn't have huge icons and one day I'm going to get to preach at such and such a place. No. It wasn't like that. It wasn't quantity, it was quality. It wasn't width, it was depth. It was being able to get the power of the Holy Spirit's expression to come out of your mouth. So whereas one group of people are focused on getting their head out of their mouth, look at how much I studied to get that out. The other group of people are trying to get their heart out of their mouth. Look at how deeply I feel. Being Baptist-costal, I got both. I don't want to hear how you feel until I hear how you think. Okay, so I don't need you to just excite me. I need you to say something. Okay, I need you to say something that I deliberate about, that feeds me intellectually. On the other hand, I don't want you to intellectualize what should be a spiritual moment. So for me, it brought out, we beheld the wonder of his glory, the only begotten of the Father, full of grace being power and truth being intellectualism. To have them both streaming out of you simultaneously is my goal and my objective.
I'm going to ask that question again, because not only because I messed up, so I'm going to say it through the camera. So how does your Pentecostal background shape your preaching?
Got it. Learning about drops already. Look at you.
Yeah, well, you know, we're trying.
That's what they call a drop. When you mess up it, you can say it over again. They can edit it back in again. He's producing his own show. just saw it last time and picked it up this time. Now he's doing drops. You can't show him anything. Brilliance always listens. It learns as much from the setting as it does from the speaker. And if you're exposed to something and you don't listen both at what is being said and then the environment in which it is being said, there's a lesson to be learned from both things. Everything for me is a teacher. Every pain is a teacher. Every problem is a teacher. When I walk into the room, I listen to what's said from the stage, but I look at the stage, I look at the crowd, I look at everything, because the class is not always up front. The class is all around you. The class is all around you, and be sure you go to school. Yeah, because if you listen carefully, you'll learn from the cab driver. You know, you learn from the busboy. Sometimes we only glorify those people with the biggest titles. But in reality, God has said some of the most profound things through the most mundane people. You know, if Naaman hadn't listened to the little maid, he would have died. Sure would have. You understand what I'm saying? You know, Jesus told the disciples to go till you see a little boy carrying a pitcher of water. Look at the minute things that he used. He gave the miracle of the 5,000 into the hands of a child in a greasy bag lunch. God has a way of being discreet with power. Yeah, and putting it in the strangest places. Let me stop.
Let's try to get to this text.
Okay. Okay.
So I would like to give you a text, and we'd like to see you work this text, because we're trying to get a sense of your sermon preparation process.
Okay.
So the text I want to give you is Deuteronomy 33 and 25, which is, as thy days are, so shall be thy strength. In one translation. So if you were going to preach that take us through the process of the preparation of a sermon around that text.
I wrote down a title, and it was Proportionate Grace.
So let me stop here. So you went from scripture to title.
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of us can't go from scripture to title.
Well, let me tell you why. When I read a text, a particular word leaps out at me.
Okay.
So the word that leaped out at me, as thy days are, so shall thy strength be, out of all of those words, the word that leaped out at me the most was as. As, in proportion to.
Okay, yeah.
To me, that's the hinge between days and strength, is as.
Okay.
So to me, as becomes the biggest word of the text, hence I get proportionate. Strength is grace.
Now, let me stop just for a moment there, because most of us would not have got, we have gone to strength, right? Or maybe days, you know. So as to rescue or to see, and you know, God gives us, different people see different things, but to see that, I just want to acknowledge that that whole text, every phrase of it is packed with.
Yes, content.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and you can flip it all kinds of ways. You can do 1,000 things. But what my initial approach to the text, the text almost sounds like it's an answer to prayer. You know, when I get to it, will I be strong enough for it? If you give it to me, can I handle it? It's comforting. Now, it is not an answer to prayer. It actually is a prophetic utterance to the tribe of Asher. We understand that. We understand that the prophetic utterance is given to all the tribes. Unto Asher, he says, as thy days are, so shall thy strength be. Wow. That means that strength is allocated in proportion to my day, like the manna was from heaven. This is my thought process. See, what I do is pull out all my ingredients like I'm going to cook, you know. I'm playing with all of my ingredients. Like the manna was, you know, it fell according to the house. So as tells me how God thinks. See, days exist and strength exists, but God decides who gets either. And what is the decision factor? He says, as thy days are, so shall thy strength be. So the first thing about it is when you start talking about proportionate grace, you start talking about, I'm starting to build the text. I never start with what I came to say. Okay. I never start with what I came to say. I always start around what I came to say, like an airport circling the runway before it lands. It may be a minute before I land on the text. I'm around the periphery. Or if it were art, I build the frame before I put the painting in. Okay. So I frame this text understanding proportionate grace and understanding the environment that there is a question inside every human soul. When I get what I prayed for, can I handle it?
So I'm pushing on it. Okay, so you said ingredients, right? So if I'm a 25-year-old preacher, and I read as thy, so you're bringing something to the table, to this text, that is an ingredient. Now, I would name it experience or life experience. You're not coming, so you mentioned that it was prophecy to the tribes of Asher.
So you want me to go naked and start as if I knew nothing?
Or you can just tell me what the ingredient, there's some ingredients that you bring into the text.
Okay, first of all, my method is to study yourself full, think yourself clear, pray yourself hot, and let yourself go. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do with the text is to understand the context in which the text is extrapolated.
Yes.
Because if I isolate the text outside of the context and don't know the context, I will violate the text.
Right.
Because the context has rules.
Right.
So I can't take this and make it a forecast for weather because it's got days in it, because I have to hold it to the context of what that means when it says days.
Okay.
You know, it's not really referring to 24 hours.
Right.
It's talking to periods in our lives and stages in our lives. What does God mean when he says days? And what does God mean when he says strength? And so I'm gathering information about the text, first reading the context of the text.
That's first ingredient.
Yeah, the second thing I wanted to look at was who was Asher.
Okay.
Okay, so when I look at that, he is the child of a concubine between Jacob, and this tribe extended out of Jacob's relationship with the concubine.
Yeah.
That's just, I may not use that, but I'm going to pull that. I'm going to have that on the table in case I need it.
Right.
You can't say everything you know about the text, but you need to know everything you can about the text.
Right.
Okay. Then it becomes, do I use it or do I not use it? But I'm pulling it all out.
Right.
Just in case, okay? And so once I have solved all of that, the next thing for me is, what's the point of this? No matter how tantalizing it is to me intellectually, no matter how emotionally fortifying it is to me spiritually, if I can't see a point for the congregation, then I don't preach it.
Okay, I'm gonna back you up.
Okay.
I'm going there. We're going there. I'm gonna back
Okay.
you back up a minute.
Do it.
So the first ingredient is context.
Mm-hmm.
But you're bringing also something else that I want to suggest called experience.
Mm-hmm.
That would separate maybe a 25-year-old from a 62-year-old looking at this text. You've got, so
Yes,
you're
yes.
bringing, so talk to me about.
Well, in a way. In a way, I agree with that. In a way, I don't.
Okay.
Yes, 62 has filled my cupboards with a lot of experiences through which I can connect and draw life's experiences. But I have been the 25-year-old too. Yeah. And I was as old as I'd ever been.
Mm-hmm. Right, I got you.
Okay.
I got
And
you.
so at 25, I was a senior statesman at my age, and I had had my share of pain.
Right.
And I'd had my share of problems.
Okay.
I don't think that the fact that you're young means that you don't have experiences and don't have pain. The issue still becomes, do you know how to draw from them?
Yes, that's
Do you
true.
know how you draw from them?
Yes.
Because I've seen people 100 and stupid.
Yeah.
So you know,
Exactly,
you know.
exactly.
So it really comes down to a principle: can you extract from those experiences substantive statements and relevance that connects to the whole experience? You don't have to be past 25 to be scared of tomorrow.
Right, right.
You can be 13 and be scared of tomorrow.
Right.
You can be 8 and be scared of tomorrow.
I agree with you 100%.
You understand what I'm saying? Now, when I look at that, all that I am comes to the text.
Yes.
But I could have preached it at 20 because all that I was enough. Now you have to know that.
Right.
All that you are, wherever you are, is enough.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
All I'm saying is, it's a difference when you're at 25, or I would say my own self, when I was 25 as a young pastor, I hadn't had my heart broke by church people yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't suffered betrayal. I mean, maybe in high school, yeah. And I'm not fundamentally disagreeing with you. What I'm pulling out this principle that you pulled out, that you have to be able to be, this is my language, not yours, reflective and be able to pull lessons out of your own living to bring to the text.
Right.
That's at 25, 62, 18.
Or observe the lives of others, because by 25 I had been betrayed in my church, and I've been betrayed in my personal life, and I've been betrayed in my family life, and I had pain, and I had a real pain for me. Mm-hmm. I think it comes down from, we're talking about experiences which gave us knowledge, but I think what escapes the conversation is wisdom.
Yes.
Wisdom shows you how to apply knowledge. Mm-hmm. And whether you're 25 or 50 or 75, if you don't have wisdom, you can collect knowledge and still not know how to apply it. Right. So knowledge loads the gun, but wisdom pulls the trigger. Right. So I had that at 25. Mm-hmm. I could have handled this text at 25. I tell you, yeah. with power, because what we're getting down to is method. I'm going to pull from knowledge, from Google. Back then it was books. It was a suitcase full of books, okay? A concordance, a Greek lexicon, a this or that, the other. You had everything, you know, and you went to places I literally went places with a suitcase that was nothing but books. Yes. Thank God for today. You don't have to do all that. I almost broke my back doing that. But I'm gonna pull all of that. But I'm also going to pull from my experiences, the experiences of people around me, confided in me, talk to me, all because this is my focus group.
Right.
Everything that talked to me ever in life is my focus group.
Right.
So I don't have to learn the fear of tomorrow from a 50-year-old. I can learn it from a 5-year-old. I told a story one Sunday about sitting on the top of the steps while my father was breaking up furniture downstairs, screaming. Scared he was going to kill my mother. And so I was about 8. You don't have to be 20 to know pain.
Yeah.
So I didn't know whether there would be a tomorrow or not. So this text rushes to the side of an 8-year-old screaming in the dark at the top of the steps and says, as our days are, so shall thy strength be. So this text is ageless in its dimension. It's relevant to everybody in the room. And so now I've selected it on the basis of it being universally applicable. It's not a black text. It's not a white text. It's not a rich folks text. It's not a straight text. It's not a gay text. It's just a text. Okay? And it is a text that every human being can relate to. Good, let's preach it. Because if it doesn't pass that test of relevance, then my diverse audience is too broad to preach a message that's only focused on 20-year-old females who vote Republican, okay? Because I will have left out half of the room, over half of the room. So my process is I collect all of this content.
Yes.
The beauty of the message is how it is weaved together.
Yes.
And when you introduce all this clutter, I might collect clutter for a week or two. Just little things pop up, and I write it in my phone, you know, a little thought came, and then all I have is clutter, okay? Now here comes the process of weaving. What comes first? What's to be left out? What's powerful? My most profound point is never going to be up front. Okay, because then the rest of the sermon is anticlimactic.
Right.
Okay, so only a rookie puts the power up front.
That's right.
Okay, so whenever you see a guy up front and he shoots his strongest shot first, number one, he's scared. Okay, and he's not sure he's got enough to pull it. Number two, he's a rookie.
Right.
Okay,
right.
So yeah. So it's the worst thing in the world you can do. I just shudder when they do. I think, oh, poor baby. Now. When I get all of my content out and I draw from all of my resources and I look at all of the metaphors I've collected, because I'm also looking for practical metaphors as our days are, so should our strength be. I might use a thermostat. I might say the thermostat controls the furnace. They may not be in the same room. So the strength that I want is controlled by the ass that I have.
Okay.
So one's a furnace and the other one's a thermostat.
Right. I want to back up.
Okay, let's back up.
Okay, so we got
love this.
We got context. We're talking ingredients. We got context. We got wisdom. Right. And you just dropped into the third, which is, I would suggest, images. Is that you can rephrase it for me? But what I heard you say is, I'm trying to find metaphors and images by which you can place profound theological content in to ride it into the hearts of people.
Yes, and in part, the images probably come from my mother. My mother was a teacher.
Right.
And back then, teaching was about images. Right. So she would bring things to school to teach principles by images. Okay, and watching her teach informs how I preach. Right. Because, and then look at Jesus. Jesus took things that you could relate to to explain things that you couldn't relate to. Right. And not only Jesus in his parabolic approach to teaching principles and truths and concepts, but also the epistles. The Holy Spirit fell like as a mighty rushing wind. It wasn't a mighty rushing wind, yes, but it was like as a mighty rushing wind. So he's using something you can relate to explain something that you couldn't relate to. Or also an anthropomorphic term, he covereth me with his feathers. Well, he doesn't have feathers, but I'm using something that you can picture, okay? And real oration is visual. It's audio video. It's the audio produces the video. Yes. And that's why the responsibility rests on the words, because anything you don't paint in speech is left blank on the picture. Right. Right. So go ahead. Go ahead.
I just say I didn't miss your point about thermostat. That was a powerful point. But I backed up off it. The point, because I'm trying to get the teaching point, so that other people can do what you do.
Okay. Pull it.
So you did.
Okay. So you got it. Okay.
Right,
okay.
So
Good.
I got it.
Good.
Right.
So, but it also justifies my fascination with the word "as." For me, you could cut the rest of it out. I just need the word "as," because when is it coming? How long, Lord? How long, Lord? How long? I could go into it right now. How long will the unrighteous prosper? How long will I suffer in this quiet? How long will I wait on your promise? How long will I wait on my husband? How long? As tells me what the decision is going to be made of. As thy days are, so shall thy strength be. You see, okay, now I know. Oh, okay. So my strength is going to be commensurate with my challenge. Right. Okay. Now I have to reprocess how I see challenge, because I know that challenge causes a secretion of strength that I would not be eligible for if the lion had not roared on Samson. The spirit would not have come upon him. Right. So thank you, lion. Right. All right. Thank you, lion. Because I couldn't have got to that part of me without you roaring. Right. Your roar is my thermostat. Right. Okay. Right. You told me. My wife told me when a baby cries, a woman's breast leaks, and she says the cry causes your milk to leak out of your breast. If the cry doesn't come, the milk doesn't flow. So thank you, baby, for crying. And so as thy days are, bad days release great strength. It was good for me that I was afflicted. Had I not been afflicted, I would have been seen you. You see what I mean? This is the clutter. Okay, I want in my mind. Oh God, in my mind, there's such clutter. The more I think about it, the more it crowds the room. There's no place to place all the things that I'm thinking about this text. Okay. And so I have all of this clutter. Yes. They're all good things, but good things in disarray cannot be appreciated. Yes. Have you ever gone in somebody's house and they had a lot of beautiful things, but it was so junked up with stuff everywhere you couldn't see it? Yeah. This is about displaying truth in a way that it can be appreciated, okay? So once I have the clutter all gathered, not all the clutter will make it into the fabric. Yes. There will be some shades that I leave in the backdrop that I don't weave into the fabric of preaching. Yes. But there will be nothing that I introduce in the beginning that won't be relevant in the end. Now, in classical preaching terms, what we say that there is a theme sentence, or in my language, a behavioral purpose statement, which is much too clever. Tell them what you're going to say. There's one sentence, kind of like the mission statement of yes, I understand, of the sermon. So you have that, right? It come after. Okay, there's context. Then what else do we say? There's wisdom, experiences, we said. Then there are images. Images. And then there comes some sense of a... The other thing that we didn't label as such, I'm gathering all the relatives to this text. The lion roared, the spirit came upon Samson. That's relative to the text. Come over here, I may use you. You know, as our days are, so shall thy strength be. The woman is hemorrhaging. She's faint. She's dying. She's withering. She heard Jesus was passing by. All of a sudden, she gets the strength to crawl. Come over here, I might use you. Okay, so I'm looking for all the relatives in the scriptures that are related to the text, because this is not a story, it's a statement. If it were a story, the story would lend itself to an exegetical approach. But because it is an isolated statement, I have to build all of these texts that are illustrations that will help to elaborate on the subject. And I may or may not use them, but I will consider as many of them as my mind can conjure.
Right.
That's, to me, the fun part.
Yes.
Here's where the artistry comes in. You know how they say, what did he know and when did he know it? What do you say and when do you say it? There's nothing worse than an answer that has no problem.
I got you.
So the power of the answer is a result of the complexity of the problem.
Yes.
So if we solve the problem before we create if we present the answer before we create the density of the problem,
Exactly.
we are in a crisis situation. Let me see what the problem was with Asher. Asher goes into Babylonian captivity, and there is no sign of God there. And the songs have dried up in their mouth. And down their pants legs runs the blood of being neutered by their assailants. And their women's dignity has been raped. And where is God? Have you ever had a moment that you wondered where was God? After years of serving him and worshiping him and loving him, he has allowed the Babylonians, the Assyrians to be exact, to take them captive. And where is God? All I have is a promise. As thy days are, so shall thy strength be. Where is the strength for this day? It was said to me in freedom, but it is birthed in me in pain. And here I stand with the most atrocious moment in my life, reaching for strength that my senses do not feel or contrive. And yet in my spirit, I have by my fingernails holding on to this promise that God never created a day that he didn't create strength to match. Give us this day. See, you see.
You starting to preach. I'm backing up.
Yeah, okay.
I'm backing up.
But I'm just showing you.
I know.
I'm showing you how I'm weaving.
I got you.
I'm weaving. See, to me, that is weaving.
Right, I got you. Arrangement. Is that what, can we?
Yes, arrangement.
In classical
arrangement.
talk, it's arrangement.
Absolutely.
It's how do you arrange?
Absolutely. It's the difference between a great joke and a poor joke. You listen to comedians. One comedian can tell a joke and leave you with your sides hurting. The other comedian can tell the same joke and put you to sleep.
Right.
And it's the difference in how the joke is arranged. Right. All the elements are there. And it's also the difference between where you took a breath, the pregnant pause, the pregnant. One of the most artful things to preaching is saying nothing.
It is.
And he sat down. And said nothing. You see how the whole room got quiet?
That's right.
To
That's
see
right.
the power of silence.
Yes.
You know, the power of silence, of pondering, of perplexity, of waiting, and all of that is weaved into the fabric.
So you can't write in your manuscript, get silent here.
No,
Right.
no,
Right.
no,
Right. You can't do that, right?
no,
No, right.
no.
Right. So
that's artistry.
Right. So let me press it because I'm getting the order lined up. So let me get the order.
Okay.
So what's the first one, y'all? The first one is context. What's the second one? Wisdom. Images. Yeah, put it there for a minute. There is,
Experience.
yeah, we got it. There is a statement in his mind somewhere that sums up a mission statement or something. There's that. Then there's arrangement,
Arrangement.
right? So how you arrange it.
Oh,
Now we're in delivery.
Delivery.
Now, delivery when you get to silence, which means that this is my experience of it, and you can correct me. That you have to feel the message. And the silence is connected to a feeling. So a fraction of a second before you say or not say anything, you feel in your spirit a pause. Or the tone is shaped. You know, you can write.
Let's back up a minute.
Go ahead.
Let's back up a minute, and let's put all of the clutter aside and the weaving of the text together aside, and let's discuss the fact that you have all of this treasure, and you must be able to understand that your voice is an instrument. And most people don't see their voice as an instrument. They see it as a byproduct of being human speech. But the voice is an instrument. It is like an oboe. It plays a song and a pitch and a tone. And so being able to vacillate up and down the scale of the instrument you have,
I got it.
you know, you understand what I'm saying? You see?
But how do you know? That's my point. About you don't have a manuscript. You ain't writing in. I'm gonna get loud. Right
No. You absolutely. This is where I need him. This is where I need him because it is hard for me to articulate that is very difficult. It's very, very difficult. One, you hear masters do it. I've heard some masters do it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, masters do it that make you get chills and stuff like that. And you can't hear that and not go home and walk around in your basement imitating it. You know, and then learning from it. Because there is a music to preaching. There is.
I'm having a great time. There
is a music. There is a music.
Yes.
There's a melody to the message. That's what I want to say. There's a melody to the message. There's a melody to the message, and all of this harmonious. Undergarb supports it, but there's a melody to the message that has moments of crescendos and moments of silence, and it goes up and down with topography, or it's boring. Or it's boring. I've seen some really smart people that I couldn't stand to hear speak. Write something, please. Don't speak because it is monotone, and that is all you are going to get. And they have profound intellectual capacity, but no ability to orchestrate it in a way that connects with a crowd. And I think, oh God, I'm going to pull my lip over top of my head, you know. But even from them, I eat the meat because some of them are brilliant. Never realizing that they bypass this instrument. An instrument, in order to be an instrument, it has to be struck or have blown through in order to produce sound, which creates vibration. The first instrument is the vocal cord, and the wind and the relationship between the two is the first oboe, is the first saxophone, is the first clarinet. And if you are a speaker, you have to see your enunciation and your pronunciation and your voice inflection and the going up and the down and process as God playing his instrument. And that instrument of pitch and tone and sound and voice articulation is what sets us apart from other people, is that we know our instrument. And it goes back to, I believe, all the way back to being in Africa, beating on wood chips and sticks and everything, that we made music out of nothing. And so there's music in our throat. You know, there's music in our throat and music in our pitch and music in our voice. Does that mean that no other people could do it? Absolutely not. But I'm explaining the tradition through which we have come to see the artistry of creating a moment. And Jesus stood still. Still. Everything is suspended and there is total silence in this moment. There is no more screaming from the blind man, nor gyrations from the crowd, nor the neighing of the donkey, nor the hustling and the bristling of flesh or fabric. Jesus stood still. Have you ever had God stand still? Now you see, you understand, now creating, taking the text and creating the moment, and then creating a moment where you tie the text out of its context into the life of the person. And the reason I brought the voice into it at that point, because the voice is the hammer that nails the point home. It won't stay, but it will control the depth to which the point penetrates. Okay, so if your voice is the hammer and your point is the nail, you're using your voice to drive in the nail. Now the voice won't stay, but the point will remain. There's no life in my throat, there's life in the word, but how I project it, how I hammer it comes out of my throat. See, and that's to me, you got me excited now. You got me excited. But to me, that's the artistry and the uniqueness of a preacher, because another preacher would come along and not be incentivized to make a big issue out of Jesus stood still. He may instead see blind Bartimaeus groping in the dark, trying to get up the courage to drop his coat. How can I live if I leave my coat? So my coat and my chance. My coat and my chance, which one shall I choose? If I leave my coat, I might freeze to death. If I reach for my chance, will I not need my coat? And then in one blistering moment of faith undetected, he drops his coat and starts moving toward what he cannot see, but he can only hear. For we walk not by sight. If blind Bartimaeus had to walk by sight, he would have died in his coat. Little by little, he comes crawling toward a Jesus who, in his desire to make it convenient, stood still. If you'd have kept walking, I could have caught you. But thank you for standing still. See what I mean? Okay, so we just flipped the whole text.
See, I'm backing up.
Okay.
I have to back up.
And you're gonna make me explain how I do it. Yeah, I know it.
Okay, so we're talking delivery now. So we talked about the voice. Now let's talk about the body. So there is undeniably the power of the voice. But I experienced in your preaching a tremendous power of the body. So talk to me about that.
Everything, you use everything. And that's why if you're inhibited, you can't do this. Because really to be inhibited is to be self-conscious. And you can't do God's work self-conscious. You have to be more God-conscious than self-conscious. And communication isn't just words or wind or rhythm or pulse. Communication is more than that. You have to be driven by something bigger than yourself, and to me that is to be God-conscious, which means, Lord, I'm available to you.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
My hands.
Right.
Or the like thereof.
Right.
Maybe I have no hands. I'll use the empty spaces.
Right.
Maybe I have no legs.
Yes.
I'll use my leglessness.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Clearly.
Maybe I'm standing on a crutch or preaching in a wheelchair, then I'll spin around in the chair.
Right.
Wherever you place me, I'll use whatever's at my disposal, because communication is more than speech.
Right.
And most people never use everything to do anything. But we do anywhere else. If you're yelling at the kids, you've got body in it. You know, if you're making love, you've got body in it. If you're protecting your territory, you've got your body in it. Why would you get to preaching and pull your body out of it? Because your body communicates the depth of your sincerity and your truth. And so, you know, I'm an animated person, and my hands are in it, my walk is in it, my stomp is in it, my stomp is my stance is in it. My stance. I tell you how much so. I have a friend of mine in Caracas, Venezuela, who used to watch me preach and touch the screen and cry and didn't know anything I was saying.
Right.
Because he speaks Spanish and I speak English. And he invited me to Caracas over how his spirit felt, hearing the sound of my voice and looking at the stance of my posture. He perceived the message that he could not receive.
Okay.
So he becomes a perfect illustration of people being able to communicate on different levels. Imagine an assailant coming at you and he speaks another language. You don't know what he's saying, but you know he's not friendly. One thing is clear, he doesn't like me. You know, and whatever he said, it's not going to turn out good. And now he's in my space. Look at how much of communication goes beyond lips. And then ask yourself the question, is my mouth out talking the rest of me? You know, is my mouth out talking the rest of me? And if you have the confidence in self not to be so worried about you, that you're willing to sacrifice your image for his, then you could use everything. I watch my daughter Sarah when she preaches. When she's really getting to the throat of her text, she starts rocking like a boxer. She starts rocking like a boxer. She, you know, I don't know where she got that from, but she started rocking like a boxer. And I don't know, it's just you know, and I don't know, because she trains, she works out, and she does box. I don't know. There's so much fight in my children, both of them. Both of my children's books about fighting. My daughter's going on a tour and she's got boxing gloves on. Sarah's got boxing gloves on, and Sarah is a prayer warrior with a sword. They're fighters. They're fighters. And if you slap us, we'll fight. You know, it's a family DNA thing. We'll fight, and I'll get stronger as the attack gets greater. I won't get weaker, I'll get stronger. Oh, you're gonna fight, it's gonna be there. You know, it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse. That's why my wife and I don't argue, because it would just be endless, as my days are. So should my strength be. So they'd find us dead somewhere, you know. So we just signed the truce and said, let's not go there. Understanding the breadth of communication is everything. And again, that's a very Pentecostal idea, because we were very animated, whereas most of your Baptist speakers were staged and stayed in one place and blew the place down, rocking back and forth like this. I studied everybody. And that's another thing. Study outside of your community and outside of your arena. If you only listen to people who think like you think and believe like you believe, you narrow the possibilities. There are I used to hear this Seventh-day Adventist preacher preach. I think he was out of D.C., but he was a great orator, great speaker, great ability to communicate and reach other people. I listened to Gene Scott preach with a cigar hanging out his mouth, talking about the Bible, to teach tabernacle like nobody ever saw in my life. Just made me feel so stupid. Talking about the tabernacle, he was blazing. And yeah, I know, blazing. You know, but his ability to mathematically deconstruct the tabernacle, you need to look at everybody, and everybody good. What made them good? What made them effective? What made them extraordinary? What did they use that I'm not using? What would make me better? You have to want this. Let's go back to that. You have to want that. There's an old story There are those stories where the young preacher came to the old preacher was retired and gone to fishing. The young preacher came down to the old preacher and says, I can't believe I caught you by yourself. I love everything you preach. I've heard everything you preach. The old man kept fishing. He didn't want to be bothered. He came out there to get away from all that. He's fishing, going about his business. The young boy kept bothering and bothering. The old man wouldn't say nothing to him. Thought, maybe if I don't say nothing, he'll go away. I'm tired. You don't retire to teach. I'm out here trying to catch this fish, and you're making too much noise. Finally, old man put down the rod and reel, grabbed the boy, snatched him, and threw him in the lake. He threw the boy in the lake, and the boy couldn't swim. And he's going down in the water, you know, he's drinking water, all he could drink. And about the third time, he's going down, about to die. The old man reached in and snatched him out the water. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? I always admired you. I was just trying to talk to you. Why did you do that? He said, shut up. Listen to me. He said, you remember when you took that last breath and how bad you wanted it? He said, that's how bad you have to want it. And he went back to fishing. See, and the truth of the matter is, most people don't want it like that. They want it if God does it, if it happens, if it's supposed to be. They want it, but they don't want it like that. People who are truly great at what they do, whether they're culinary skills or whether it's masonry skills or whether it is intellectualism or whether it is preaching, you have to want it like that. If you don't want it like oxygen, you'll never be that. Yes. You'll never be that. If you don't stay up when others fall asleep, if you don't listen at every interview to listen to how well stated it is, and every now and then jot down a word because you learned a word you didn't know to add to the arsenal that you can use to better articulate the wondrous, splendiferous grace of God, yes, then you don't want it bad enough. You don't want it bad enough, and it will never happen for you.
I'm backing up.
Okay.
I'm on body.
Okay.
Body has to do with space. I asked you this before, but I'll ask you again, and with the follow-up. So the way that you manage space is that you walk.
Yeah, I do.
Right? And so what's happening when you're walking?
It's all a habit. It comes from preaching in the woods. I didn't have a crowd. I didn't have anybody. I was preaching in my mother's basement, pacing the floor. There's some correlation between thinking and walking and playing with my coat. Right. I wish I could give some great word of wisdom as to why I do it, but it is that boy in the back of my mother's house, just right above the creek bed, walking up and down the path, preaching to himself, wondering if he'd ever have a people to talk to. Never get so far away from your roots that God doesn't recognize who called you.
That's right.
And that boy's still walking like that.
And I think the point is that every person has to find their own place of authenticity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it doesn't mean that you should walk.
Right.
But it does mean you should be authentic to what is really you.
Exactly.
If you take a guy like Smokey Norfolk, little tiny short guy, respectfully, but he makes the shortness work for him. He uses his size as a part of it, and because he is short, he can do some things that a big guy couldn't do. Right. And I use my size to my favor. All of it. If you see it as an attribute and not a liability, anything is an asset. Yes. Anything is an asset. Yes. Anything is a tool. I've seen preachers preach with no arms at all. Right. And they used it as an asset and not a liability. Yes. You know, one day my arms will be back. you know, I can't shake your hand right now. But one day, that's what I mean about having confidence enough to walk up on the stage and be certain enough to use everything as an attribute to deliver in stance, in pitch, in demeanor, all of these things, these abstract individual nuances collectively create a brand called you.
Right.
And being true to that brand makes you legitimate, and being authentic. And one of the things that I'm going to share in the book is the breadth of that brand determines the diverse opportunities that you get.
Yeah, very so.
Yeah. If you were not broad, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
The breadth of your brand extends your reach to go places you wouldn't go. Now, but every brand has guardrails. And you have to know, if you have no guardrails, if you'll do anything to get a date,
Yeah.
you understand?
Or a sermon, I'll get a preaching
That's what I mean. Yeah. If you do anything, you have to know what you are not so you can understand what you are. And that, when arrogance leads the conversation, you try to be everything and end up being nothing.
Right.
And so having some guardrails and distinctives to define what engagements you will and will not take. Everything that's offered to you is not for you, no more than every ball pitched at you should be swung at with the bat. Some things you let go past you because it's not for you. That's not what I do. A guy asked me the other day in a Q&A session, what were my plans to reduce crime in the city of Dallas? I said, I have none. That's not what I do. And if I had some, they would frustrate me. To develop plans for a position that I don't hold would lead to frustration.
Right.
You see? So what I'm kindly telling him, that's not my brand, that's not what I do. I pray for them to do. I have some thoughts about it, I have some ideas about it, but to sit down and lay down for a plan that I don't have a position for would be a waste of something that I hold precious, like time.
I'm backing up.
Okay, back me up.
I notice that there's usually a point, we're about body and space, that you come from the platform directly down to the audience.
Now that's strategic.
Tell me about that.
You and I both know that originally in the days of Christ in the early church, there were no platforms. And you know, the whole idea of an elevated preacher in a lofty position was something of which the scripture had disdain. And the power of Jesus was to be one from among you, to understand the fact that he has come to be with us, Emmanuel, God with us. The whole narcissistic Nicolaitan ideology of pulpits was to create aristocracy. Okay, so ultimately, when I come down to the ground, it's for connectivity. I want to be close to you. I want to be one from among you. I want to sit where you sit. I want to look you in the eye. I want to create the intimacy that this lofty stage will not allow. And so I come down, and God came down. You know, if God came down, then why can't we? The whole substratum of the gospel message is a God who was up high came low, that he being low might lift me and raise me to where I ought to be. And so it's a physical illustration of a spiritual ideology, and it's about connecting with the audience on the most personal level, especially if you're going to deal with the most personal subjects. If you're going to talk to me about my childhood and about my marriage and about my finances and about being molested when I was 12, don't do that from some lofty position of arrogance.
That's right.
Come down where I'm at and be one with me and recognize that that vulnerability means something, and those tears falling from my face is my life.
Yep.
My life, you can't go that deep into my life far removed from me.
Yeah.
That intimacy, because you must remember there's still a certain degree of relationship that exists between the pulpit and the pews. There's a dance between the two. There's a rhythm between the two. Right. And so for this, as we move down into that intimate space, pretty soon I'm going to ask you to give your life to Christ. Your life? An offering is nothing. You want me to give my life to Christ? and to come into your space and tell my own story and shed my own tears. Really good preaching requires that you put your own life out there.
Yes, man, that's true.
You know, and you haven't preached real good till you get in the car feeling naked.
Right.
And wish you hadn't have said that.
Right.
And wonder what they thought about it. And did I expose too much of myself? If you don't go home feeling a little bit like a sacrificial lamb, you didn't put yourself out there. And I'm not saying you should put yourself out there all the time, but if you're gonna expect me to put myself out there, you have to be prepared to put yourself out there too, because you have to be kidding to me to redeem me. You know, and so you can't be perfect and redeem me. You have to come down and tell me I cried too. I just got through crying last night. I'm having a problem with my child right now, about to drive me crazy, and still I rise. You know, that resonates with us. It is the only therapy our people had. Was ministry. We didn't have a pastor and a therapist and a doctor and a dentist and a lawyer, you know, and you had Reverend. I want Reverend to look at these papers for I'm not signing nothing till the Reverend sees it. You know, now I tell you that, I'm going to, Reverend, what do you think about so-and-so? So we had to be a lot of different things. And I explained to our white counterparts, what we mean by church isn't always what you mean by church, and what is expected of me might not be expected of my white brother and counterpart, because we look to the pastor to delve into everything. Charlie beating me, run around here serving communion at the church, and he come home and beat me and the kids. You got to deal with everything. Yeah. And so getting in that intimate space of lifting people, how could you lift me right now and not touch me? Now, as big as I am, as many as y'all are in the room, you could lift me, but not if you didn't touch me. You would have to touch me and come where I am in order to lift me. And I think our people, and people in general, because more and more we learn from each other. And I think other people are learning that there's a lot of competition for the 11 o'clock hour on Sunday morning.
Yeah, there is, yes.
Like sleep and and Netflix and binge watching and the mall. If you're not going to create something that is of value to me personally, I'll catch you later.